You ever open a real estate app just to look, and 5 minutes later you feel personally attacked? Because you start innocent, you're not even serious, you're just browsing. And then you realize something that hits like a punch. $500,000 isn't the high end anymore, it's the starting line. $500,000 for a house that's normal. Not a mansion, not luxury, just a basic place with 3 bedrooms and a driveway, and sometimes not even that. That's when your brain starts asking the questions nobody wants to say out loud. Who is buying these? Like, seriously, who has this kind of money? Am I behind? Did I mess up? Did I pick the wrong job? Did everyone else level up and I missed the update? And for a second, it feels like the problem must be you. But here's the brutal truth. Most people aren't behind. The math is behind, because the price of the house is living in one world and regular income is living in another. And the gap between them has gotten so big that it's not a tight budget problem anymore. It's a reality problem. And that's why this video matters, because I'm not here to tell you what a bank will approve you for. Banks approve people into bad decisions every single day. Today, we're not talking about approval. We're talking about survival. We're going to break down who can really afford a $500K house in 2027 without becoming house poor, without living stressed, and without being one broken car or one medical bill away from panic. Let's get into the real numbers. So here's what we're doing today. Super simple. We're answering one question. Who can actually afford a $500K house in 2027 without ending up house poor? Not who can get approved, not who can make the first few payments, not who can survive as long as nothing goes wrong. I mean who can buy it and still breathe, who can pay the mortgage, handle repairs, pay the bills, save money, and still live like a normal person. Because a lot of people think they can afford a house when what they really mean is, I can pay for it if life doesn't happen. And life always happens. So in this video, we're going to look at the full picture, the monthly payment plus the hidden costs, the stuff nobody gets excited to mention, the costs that show up after you move in and the excitement wears off. And just so you know what kind of video this is not a hype video. This is not work harder and anything is possible. This is not just believe and manifest a backyard. This is the boring part that saves your future. Real numbers and real life costs. By the end, you'll know exactly where you stand and what $500K really demands from your income and your life. Before we go any further, we need to fix one word that confuses people and ruins lives: affordable. Because the way most people use affordable is basically this: if the bank approves me, I can afford it. That sounds logical, but it's a trap. Here's why. Banks don't approve you based on what feels comfortable for you. They approve you based on what's profitable and unlikely to fail fast for them. They're measuring risk to the lender, not stress to the buyer. So if you're thinking, well, the bank said yes, so I'm good, that's like saying the casino let me in, so I must be rich. No, they just think you can keep playing long enough. So for this video, we're using a different definition of really afford. A house is only affordable if you can pay the housing cost every month without panic, maintain the house when things break, because they will, handle emergencies without going into debt, still save and invest like an adult who wants a future, and still, live like a human. Eat out sometimes, enjoy life, buy your kids shoes, take a short trip, breathe. Because if buying the house means you stop saving, you start using credit cards for normal life, and every surprise expense becomes a crisis, then you didn't buy a house. You bought a stress subscription with a 30-year contract. So with that definition locked in, now we can be honest about who can actually afford $500K in 2027. All right, now we get to the part people always underestimate. When someone says the house is $500,000, your brain hears one number. But your life pays a stack every month, no skipping. So let's break a $500K house into the real monthly bill, no fluff. First, the mortgage payment, principal, and interest. This depends on your rate and your down payment, but for most buyers in a normal rate world, you're usually looking at something like $2,600 to $3,500 a month, and that's before we add anything else. Next, property taxes. This varies a lot by area, but a realistic range is $300 to $900 a month. Some places are higher, much higher. Then home insurance. Again, depends on location and risk, but think $150 to $450 a month, and in some areas it's climbing fast. Now, here's the one everybody forgets until the first big problem shows up: maintenance. Because a house isn't a one-time purchase, it's a machine you live inside, and machines break. A simple rule is 1% of the home's value per year for repairs and upkeep. On a $500,000 home, that's about $5,000 a year, or roughly $420 a month. Now let's talk about the quiet fee that shows up when you don't put 20% down: PMI, private mortgage insurance. Not always, but very common, and it's usually around $150 to $400 a month. And finally, the hidden landmine, HOA. Maybe it's zero, maybe it's 200, maybe it's 500 plus, and sometimes it jumps later because it can. Okay, now we stack it. Let's use a reasonable, middle-of-the-road example with no HOA, just to stay fair. Mortgage, principal plus interest, $3,000. Property taxes, $600. Insurance, $250. Maintenance, $420. PMI, $250. Now added, that's $4,520 a month. That is the number your life has to carry. Not for a month, not for a year, for years. And here's the brutal truth. If you can't pay that and still save money, handle emergencies, and live normally, then the house isn't affordable. It's just expensive stress with a front door. Now, let's flip the equation. We already built the real monthly number. Let's call it $4,520 a month. So the question becomes, what income does a person need so that $4,520 doesn't turn their life into a pressure cooker? There are two ways to look at this. The safe standard, comfort and stability. Most financial advisors will tell you housing should be around 25 to 30% of your gross income. Let's use a middle point, 28%. So if $4,520 is 28% of your monthly income, you need about $16,150 monthly gross. That's roughly $194,000 a year. And remember, that's gross, not take-home. Taxes haven't even taken a bite yet. That's the I can afford this and still build a life number. The stretch standard, bank says, sure, why not? Banks often approve people at much higher ratios, sometimes around 40% plus when you include debts. So if we use a rough stretch number like 43%, then $4,520 becomes $10,500 monthly gross, roughly $126,000 a year. And here's the part people miss. That stretch number assumes you don't have much else, because if you also have student loans, car payments, childcare, credit cards, anything, this falls apart fast. So when someone says, good news, you're approved, approval is not a flex. A lot of the time, approval is a warning sign. It's the bank saying, yeah, you can probably make the payments as long as nothing goes wrong. But life is literally a machine that produces surprise expenses. So if the math says you need $190,000 to be safe, that's not negativity, that's physics.
Now we answer the title question directly. Who can really afford a $500K house in 2027? Not with vibes, not with hope, with categories. Because when you look at the real monthly cost, buyers usually fall into 4 buckets, and once you see these buckets, you can't unsee them. Bucket A, no margin buyers. These are people who can technically make the payment, but only if life stays perfectly calm. They're fine as long as the car doesn't break, nobody gets sick, nothing in the house fails, work hours don't change, prices don't jump. But if one real-life thing happens, just one, they're instantly in trouble. A surprise $900 repair? Credit card. A $3,000 home issue? Financing. A slow month at work? Panic. This bucket isn't home ownership. It's walking a tightrope with no net. Bucket B, stretch buyers. This is the most common bucket and the most dangerous. They qualify on paper. They can close the deal. They can post the "we did it" photo. But their life becomes monthly anxiety math. Every month is the same routine. Pay the house, pay the basics, hope nothing happens, tell yourself it'll get easier later. And later becomes a fantasy. Saving? Later. Investing? Later. Emergency fund? Later. Peace of mind? Not in this season of life, which never ends. They don't own a home comfortably. They carry it like a heavy backpack they can't take off. Bucket C, comfort buyers. This is the first group that can actually say, yes, we can afford this. They can pay the full monthly cost, handle maintenance without going into debt, keep an emergency fund growing, invest consistently, and still live like normal humans. They have margin, and margin is the difference between owning a house and a house owning you. Bucket D, safe buyers. This is the top tier, not rich necessarily, just stable. They can absorb a hit without falling apart. If one person loses hours, they're okay. If rates and insurance rise, they're okay. If the roof needs work, they don't panic. They buy the house without gambling their future. This is what real affordability looks like. Not just paying today's bills, but being able to handle tomorrow's surprises. So when people ask, who can really afford a $500K house? The honest answer is, not the people who can barely make the payment. The people who can afford it are the ones with margin, the ones who can pay it and still build a life. Now let's make this real, because numbers feel different when they're attached to a real month. Same house, same $500K price, same kind of monthly housing cost, but 3 different households and 3 completely different lives. And watch this closely, because this is the key point. 2 people can both own a house, but only one of them owns peace of mind. Household 1, strong but normal income. Let's say a household earns $120,000 a year. That sounds good, right? Most people would call that doing well. But after taxes, health insurance, and basic deductions, their take-home might be around $7,000 to $7,500 a month. Now the house costs about $4,520 a month. So right away, they're down to roughly $2,500 to $3,000 for everything else. Now stack normal life. 2 cars or 1 car plus commuting costs, $700 to $1,200. Groceries, $700 to $1,000. Utilities, internet, and phones, $300 to $500. Student loans or credit card minimums, $300 to $700. Childcare, if they have kids, easily $800 to $1,800 plus. See what happens? They're not wasting money. They're not living fancy. They're just watching their good income get eaten alive by basic life. They can own the house, but they live one surprise expense away from debt. That's bucket A or bucket B. Household 2, higher income couple or family. Now let's bump it up. Say a couple earns $170,000 a year. On paper, that looks like, okay, they've got this. But real take-home after taxes, benefits, retirement contributions, maybe $9,500 to $10,500 a month. Subtract the same $4,520 housing cost. Now they have about $5,000 to $6,000 left. This sounds like a lot until you remember this is where modern life gets heavy. Childcare or after-school costs, $1,000 to $2,000. Car payments and insurance, $800 to $1,200. Groceries, family, $900 to $1,200. Utilities, phones, and internet, $400 to $600. Student loans, credit card minimums, medical payments, $400 to $1,000. Suddenly, they're left with what? A little breathing room, but not the kind that makes you feel safe. They're not poor, but they're still stressed. Because with this setup, one job disruption doesn't feel like a bump, it feels like a threat. That's bucket B for a lot of people. Household 3, truly comfortable income. Now let's talk about the household that can actually do this clean. Say they earn $230,000 to $250,000 a year. Their take-home might be around $13,000 to $15,000 a month, depending on situation. Subtract the same $4,520. Now they still have $8,500 to $10,500 left. This is where the difference shows up. They can fix the car without panic. They can replace an appliance without financing it. They can handle a $6,000 roof issue without going into debt. They can invest every month. They can keep an emergency fund. And they can still enjoy life. And notice something important. They're not living in a mansion. They're not buying luxury. They're buying stability. Here's the key beat.
All three households might buy the same 500K house. They all own a house, but only one of them owns peace of mind. Because the real flex isn't owning the house. The real flex is owning the house without fear. Now let's talk about what happens when someone buys the 500K house without margin. Because it usually doesn't explode on day one. That's the scary part. It breaks you slowly, month by month, in a way that looks fine from the outside.
Here's how it usually goes. Month 1, you make the payment. You feel proud. You tell yourself, we're good. Month 2, same thing. It's tight, but you're managing. Month 3, you adjust. You cut a few things. You say, it's just the first few months. Month 4, the car needs repairs, maybe brakes, maybe tires. It's $800. You didn't plan for it. So you do the temporary move. Credit card. You tell yourself you'll pay it off next month. Month 5, next month comes, but the mortgage still comes first. So the credit card becomes a balance, not a one-time thing. Month 7, now the house reminds you it's not just a place, it's a responsibility. The AC fails, or the plumbing starts acting up, or the roof leaks. The quote is $3,500, $6,000, $9,000. You don't have that kind of cash sitting around because there was never room to build it. So you finance it. You take a loan, or you put it on another card. Now you're paying the house plus paying for the house. Month 9, and this is where things get dangerous. Work slows down. Hours get cut. A contract ends. Someone gets laid off. Even a small income dip, $500 short per month, becomes a crisis because there's no buffer. And people always say, you need an emergency fund. But here's the truth. The emergency fund never happens because every dollar is already assigned before the month even starts. Mortgage, bills, debt, repairs, groceries, fuel, insurance. There's no extra. There's only not enough. And that's the moment you realize what you actually bought. You didn't just buy a house. You bought stress. You bought risk. You bought a life where one surprise expense can knock everything over. This is being house poor. All right, here's the simple decision framework so you leave this video with clarity, not confusion. Let's make it clean. 3 tests. Test number 1, income test. If your household income is below about $140,000 to $150,000, a $500,000 house usually turns into risk, not ownership. Because at that level, you're not buying comfort, you're buying a situation where one bad month can break the plan. If you're in the 150 to 190 range, you might be able to do it, but it often becomes tight and stressful unless your other expenses are low. And if you're around 190 plus, that's where it starts to look like real affordability, meaning you can pay the house and still have a life. Test number 2, safety net test. Here's the rule people ignore. If you're using most of your savings just to get the keys, you're not ready. So ask this. After your down payment and closing costs, do you still have at least $15,000 to $30,000 sitting there? Because that's the difference between something broke, we handle it, and something broke, we panic. If your savings are below about $20,000 to $30,000, you're buying without a real safety net, and that's how normal repairs turn into long-term debt. Test number 3, future you test. This one's brutal but fair. If buying the house means you can't invest monthly anymore, it's not affordable. Not someday, not after we settle in, now. If after housing and basics you can't still invest, even $500 to $1,000 consistently, then the house is eating your future. Because real affordability isn't just making the payment. Real affordability is paying the house, handling repairs, keeping an emergency fund, investing every month, and still sleeping at night. If you can't do that, it's not a home. It's a financial trap with a mailbox. Let's close this with the most important point, because I know how this feels. If you've been looking at these prices and feeling stressed, feeling behind, feeling like you're failing at some basic adult milestone, listen carefully. This is not personal failure. This isn't you being lazy. This isn't you not wanting it enough. This isn't you needing one more budgeting hack. This is a market that has drifted far away from normal incomes.
Home prices have moved like rocket ships, and paychecks have moved like bicycles. Those two things can't stay connected forever, and now we're seeing the result. A $500,000 house being treated like it's normal, when for most incomes, it's a financial gamble. And here's the reframe that can save your mental health. Real wealth isn't a house that drains you. Real wealth is freedom. It's having margin. It's having room to breathe. It's being able to handle emergencies without fear. It's being able to invest. It's being able to say no to a toxic job because your whole life isn't held hostage by one payment. Because a mortgage that forces you into constant anxiety isn't building wealth, it's just building pressure. So if the numbers don't work for you right now, that doesn't mean you're losing. It means you're seeing reality clearly. And that's power. If this breakdown helped you see the housing market more clearly, subscribe, because this channel is about honest money math, not hype. And I want to hear from you. Comment your city and tell me what $500,000 actually buys there in 2027. Is it a normal family home, a tiny condo, a fixer-upper, or basically nothing? Because the more we talk about real numbers, the less people feel like they're struggling alone. And remember this, being realistic isn't quitting, it's winning against bad math.